Shalom חברים, הם ברוכים הבאים to a special teaching for the 9th of Av. Today is the 9th of Av. If you didn't know it, 9th of Av started last night, and I decided this week that instead of just a regular Pearls of Torah, since today is a fast day and it's an important day in Jewish history, I decided to do a special study for the 9th of Av. So the one thing I'm asking all of you to do is to hit the little share button right now, share this study with others so we can get others online as well. We wanted to bring this particular study for you because it is so important. And today we are going to go through the book of Echa. Of course, we don't have time to go through the entire book of Echa or Lamentation. We're going to go through a specific segment that I found especially appropriate. If you are blessed by this program, if you are impacted by what we teach at Ahavat Ammi Ministries, I really encourage you to consider partnering with our ministries and support the work that we're doing all over the world. And it is your faithfulness that allow us to do it. So I want to touch on several topics today that are so important and critical for the body of Messiah, for Israel, for the Geulah, the coming of the King. We're going to touch on all of this. Don't know if I'll be able to get through this entire study, but we will see. But during the 9th of Av, it is customary to read the book of Echa, or in English, Lamentation. Now, I want to explain to you that the book of Echa, it's made out of 5 lamentations, okay? When they were written roughly outside, just after the destruction of Jerusalem, after the exile by Nebuchadnezzar, roughly in the year 586 BC, okay? It was canonized into the Hebrew Bible later on. Who wrote the book of Echa? Nobody knows actually who wrote the book of Echa. It's a mystery, but most commentators tell us that it was actually Jeremiah, the prophet, who wrote the book of Echa. As a matter of fact, if you look at the Hebrew language, linguistically, the book of Jeremiah and Megillat Echa, they mirror each other in many, many ways, okay? But there's no mention of the name of the author. However, in the what's known as Tirgum Shivim, in the Tirgum Shivim of the book of Echa, in the very, very, very first verse, it says, in the Targum, it says, Vayeshev Yirmiyahu Lifkot. Jeremiah was there, and Jeremiah was lamenting, okay? ויקונן הקינה הזאת על ירושלים. He gave this particular lamentation upon Jerusalem. So actually this is a place where the Christian and Jewish tradition agree, for the most part, that it is written by Yirmiyahu, okay? Also in the Talmud, by the way, the Babylonian Talmud mentions that Jeremiah wrote the book of Echa, okay? Now the structure of the book of Echa, before we get there, is very interesting. There are 5 lamentations, okay? Each one of the lamentations, with one exception, start with the word Echa, okay? Echa comes from the Hebrew word Ech. How? And in chapter 1, and in chapter 2, and in chapter 4, and in chapter 5, all the chapters, with the exception of chapter 3, okay, the prophet lament and ask the question, how can this happen to Jerusalem? How is it possible that this glorious city, this particular glorious city, have reached to such a condition that it is like it is today, okay? So the word Echa is important. This comes from the Hebrew word Ech. And it has an acrostic, chapter 1 and chapter 2. And Also, chapter 4 have an acrostic, 22 verses. Chapter 5, okay, chapter 5 is also have the same amount of verses, but it's not in acrostics. Chapter 3, on the opposite, has 66 verses, which is 22 times 366. This 22 repeating itself. But there is something very interesting about chapter 3. Chapter 3 does not mentions the destruction of Jerusalem. The question we must ask ourselves, what is chapter 3 is all about? It is actually talking about something completely different and almost seemed misplaced. Some said that some of those chapters, like chapter 5, has been written later on. I don't think that this is the case. Chapter 1 and chapter 2 and chapter 4 talking about the lamentation of the destruction of Jerusalem, the destruction of the temple, the famine, the fact that there was no food, the destruction of the city. Okay? And matter of fact, it's even mentioned cannibalism in the text, which is disgusting to think about. Okay? However, in the third lamentation, okay, of the book of Echa, okay, we're not dealing with the destruction of Jerusalem or in the exile of the people, what's called the Galut, okay? It's a kina, the Hebrew word lamentation, that deal with a kina of one individual. One individual. It is not clear, at least not on the surface, who wrote it and what is his troubles and what the calamities that he went through. Today we're going to find out a great mystery in the scriptures. If you watch it now, I'm asking all the people who are watching, hit the share button, spread the word around, because today teaching is going to change many lives, I believe so. We're going to go word by word through a specific portion of lamentation, okay? I want to talk for a second about this word Echa. This is an important word, Echa. How? Yirmiyahu start chapter 1, he says, Echa yeshva badad. How is this city that was so glorious now is completely lonely? But you realize that the term Echa was not something exclusive to Yirmiyahu Hanavi. Okay? The term Echa is mentioned 3 times according to Chazal, but I'm going to correct it and say that this is 4 times. Okay? What it says. In the book of Echa Rabbah, Lamentation Rabbah, the very first verse says the following. Echa yashva, nitnab'u belashon Echa. Who used this word Echa as a tongue of prophecy? And the Midrash explained that 3 have done it. And you're going to see it in the text. Moshe, Isaiah, and Jeremiah. Make yourself a note. Moses, Isaiah, and Jeremiah all used the term Echa. Moshe says, if you want the reference, it's in Deuteronomy. We just passed it, Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 12. He said, Echa esa levadi. Okay, how can I carry you by myself? Okay, Isaiah said when he cried out in his lamentation in Isaiah chapter 1, when he rebuked the children of Israel, or the children of Israel in Judah, you know, in the kingdom of Judah, when he says to them, Echa aita lezona. How did you become like a prostitute? That was the word. And of course, here in Jeremiah chapter 1, it says, Echa yashva badad. How you became lonely, okay? Here's the way Chazal explained it in the beginning of Echa Rabbah. Amar Rabbi Levi, mashal lematrona. Okay, it's a story of a wedding, okay? Shayu la shlosha shuvevin. It's a story of a bride that has like 3 bridesmaids, okay? Echad ra'a ota b'shalvata. One saw it in her peace. אחד ראה אותה בפחזותה, one saw it in her hastening, אחד ראה אותה בנבולה. One saw her when she was in her lowest point of her heart. כך משה ראה את ישראל בקבותם, the similar, Moses saw Israel in their glory, okay, Isaiah saw them when they are walking away from God, and Jeremiah saw them in the final fall, okay? This word Echa is such an important word because it's almost like a pulse, okay? Imagine putting a pulse on all of Israel, okay? Putting a pulse machine on all of Israel. And the Echa represent where Israel is spiritually, okay? Interestingly enough, though, the word Echa is mentioned for the first time in the garden, okay? At least not exactly the word Echa, it's the same word, the pronounced differences. Ayecha, okay? It's kind of like Echa, it's the same word actually. And who says Echa? It was God who says Echa to Adam. When Adam and Eve were trying to hide from God and said the Spirit of God was walking, okay, what is the one word that God shouted in the garden? How? Adam, how can you do this to me? Adam and Eve, how could you betray me? So there is this principle here of the word Echad that is also related to the garden, returning for the garden, okay? We must ask to learn how to ask Echa if we want to return back to the garden. One of the things that I want you to take out of this study today is a question. Each one of you have to ask yourself the question, how did we, Israel, got to our condition today? How do I contribute to this condition? And what can I do? How can I make this condition better? This is all the questions of Tisha B'Av that each one of us have to ask ourselves. And here in the book of Jeremiah, the Echa, the last one, the Jeremiah Echa, is not in their glory, it's not when they're sin, it's in their lowest state. Okay. Interestingly enough, the 9th of Av is connected also to the coming of the Mashiach. Chazal explained, as a matter of fact, the tradition is that at midnight, last night at midnight, you are to wash your house. Why are you washing your house at midnight? You might wonder. It's a traditional Hasidic tradition that the Mashiach has to be appearing on the 9th of Av. Why? Because it is the Mashiach himself, Chazal explained, who will be a substitute of the temple. That's why it says in Tractate Rosh Hashanah, it says, Shkula mitat tzadikim kesrifat bet Eloheinu. The death of the righteous is weighted to the destruction of our temple. This notion that something has to come and replace the temple is engraved in all Jewish theology. Okay? And today, more than any other day probably on the Jewish calendar, more even than Yom Kippur, our people are calling for Mashiach to return. Let us look at the connection between the coming of the Messiah to the story of Echa today. I hope this will strike with you and you understand what an important part you have to pray. As a matter of fact, it is Yeshua himself who said in Matthew 23, and I quote, he said, "Woe to you, blind guides. You say, whoever swear by the temple, it is nothing. But whoever swear by the gold of the temple, he is obligated. O fool and blind ones, which is greater, the gold or the temple that made the gold holy? And you say, whoever swear by the altar, it is nothing. But whoever swear by the offering on it, he is obligated. O blind ones, which one is greater?" he asked. the offering on the altar that makes the offering holy. Therefore, whoever swear by the altar, swear both the altar and everything on it. And whoever swear by the temple, swear both by the temple and by him who dwell in it. And whoever swear by heaven, swear both by the throne of God and by him who sit on it. The point is clear, okay? It is the true tzaddik, the ultimate tzaddik, who is the Mashiach, who is going to be presented as substitute for the temple. Okay? He is a substitute to the temple. So people ask us, we Messianic believers should mourn? Yes, because the physical temple has not been established yet. And also we're going to learn that the spiritual temple has not been established yet, fully yet. Our job today is to establish the spiritual temple so that the Mashiach will come and establish the physical. 4 out of the 5 chapters in the book of Echa deals with the destruction. Corporate destruction of Jerusalem, spiritually, morally, physically bankrupt. Well, we are dwelling today in Jerusalem, the Jewish people, yet we lament in Tisha B'Av. Why is it? It is because although we physically in Jerusalem, spiritually Jerusalem has not been established yet. And here in the beginning, we're going to look today specifically at the study of chapter 9. And the reason, chapter 3, verse 1. We're going to start, and we're going to get verse 9 in a second. But chapter 3, verse 1, we're going to go through the entire chapter 3 because there's something unique about chapter 3. We'll see how far we can get. But chapter 3 is a chapter unlike any other chapter. All the other chapters start with the word Echa, but not chapter 3. If you have your Bibles, I want you to turn to the book of Lamentation with me and chapter 3, verse 1. And notice something amazing. Chapter 3 starts with the word Ani Agever. Have you ever heard this expression? Who is the man? He said, you are the man? That is exactly what Ani Agever means. I am the man. I am responsible. I am part of the exile. I am part of the galut. I am responsible, and I'm talking to each one of you watching the program today. You are responsible for the fact Mashiach has not come yet. We all are responsible, not just the Jewish people. Each and every one of us are responsible for the fact that Yeshua has not returned yet. The word Ani Agever, something is happening here in this story. The men here in question start to ask these questions, this hard question. Who is this man? Well, that is a mystery that I'm going to answer in a minute. The man represents Israel, but this man is not just Israel. If you are part of Israel and you say, I am part of Israel, I encourage you today to say this word, Ani Agever. I have to ask the question. And what happened when you ask the question? Distancing happened. Distancing between us and Hashem. Why? Because we realize how far we have been transgressing from Him. So when he say Ani Agever, in essence, He's calling back and saying, I want to make God the center of my life, okay? And how does he do it? By asking one question. Echa. Am I the one that's hiding? Like Adam and Eve, when God is calling me, and I'm the one hiding behind a tree? Or am I the one who are hiding in my spiritual life? Am I the one who are hiding in my congregation, in my community? Am I the one who hides in front of the Jewish community? We all are guilty in this. And everything that we do today is stemmed from the word Echa. I'm asking you again, if you are interested, if you're blessed by this, hit share now. Let's get more people on this important, life-changing story. The story of Echa, the story of the Jewish people. And as we're going to learn today, it's even the story of the Messiah. This third lamentation, what's called in Hebrew the Kinah Shlishit, is abnormal. It's abnormal because there is no word of lamentation on Yerushalayim. If you read the entire chapter 3, you're not going to find somebody here talking about his private tribulations, okay? Private troubles. And from verse 1 to all over verse like 19, he's talking about those troubles. They're depressing. And we're going to focus today on the first 30 verses together, okay? And I'm going to use the Hebrew, okay? And the English side by side. I want you to follow this today with me. This third kina is in the very, very heart of the book. So I want you to turn with me to Lamentation chapter 1, and we're going to start, and we're going to look at verse 1 and verse 2. It starts as following. Ani הגבר, ראה אני בשבט עברתו. אותי נהג ויולך חושך ולא אור. Okay, let's start there. I am the man who has seen affliction under the rod of his fury. He has led me and made me walk in darkness and not in light. Please understand that at the beginning of chapter 3, what's happening here, the man in question, okay, describe the status of what we call a galut. What is a galut? Galut can be physical exile, but a galut can also be a spiritual exile. And here we describe that upon the destruction of the temple, Israel, he himself and Israel, is in the galut. Okay? Now, he appears to be blaming God. This individual appears to be blaming God. He says there is darkness, there is no more light. But I would like to suggest to you that there is already a change in the heart of the man here in this story. How do I know it? As I explained to you a minute ago, he uses the word ani agever. I am the man. I am responsible. I am accountable. We want to see change. You want to see change in the redemption of Israel. It's starting today with the word ani agever, with each and every one of us saying, I am responsible. Okay? As a matter of fact, listen to the word of Netzach Israel on this verse. I love this. It says this. וסדר ירמיהו ג' איכה מתחילים באיכה ואילו it starts בעני הגבר. It says in Netzach Israel, all the other chapters start with איכה. How? He's angry. How can you do it to me? How can you do it to me? And we're all doing it to God. God, how can you do this to us when we go through calamity? But there is a shift in the story here. Ani הגבר. I am responsible. We cannot look at God and we cannot blame God. We are responsible today for the galut, okay? And look what he said. He said, Ki nira gimel echa. There are three echa. Yesod al chorban bayit rishon. There are three reasons that the first temple has been destroyed. Ve'ani hagever speak about the destruction of the second temple, okay? The second temple. This is very important. I want you to understand this. It's a prophecy, according to Netzach Israel, for the destruction of not just the first temple, but also the destruction of the second temple. Why? Because the first three things that the first temple has been destroyed on, what are they? According to Yoma chapter 9, it says clearly what they are. They are, number one, avodah zarah, idol worship. To gilui erayot, forbidding sexual immorality, and number three, shfichat damim, bloodshed. Okay, but here there is another eicha talking about ani hagever. Okay, which is what? Well, Tractate Yoma tell us why the second temple has been destroyed. It is destroyed because of baseless hatred. What is the musar here that explained to us by our rabbi? He said, "Vehi shkula keneged gimel chataim, avodah gzara, gilu arayot, v'shvichot damim." Baseless hatred, please understand, baseless hatred is equivalent to murder, to improper sexual immorality, okay? And it is even equivalent to Avodah Zarah. If there is a hate inside of Israel, it is speaking about if there's a really baseless hate inside Israel, it's equivalent to us murdering each other, having improper sexual immoralities, etc., etc. It is talking not just about the first, but it's a prophecy. So first of all, we are establishing something very important here by Netzach Israel. This is not me. This entire chapter here that we're talking about is truly a prophecy. Make yourself the more a note. It is not just talking about the past, it is talking also about the future of Israel, okay? About the destruction of the second temple, and as we're going to see, also talking about the third temple. So verse 1 and verse 2 here, he's talking about the affliction. Who is the man in this story? The man in this story is clearly Israel. Make yourself the note. The man in this story is clearly Israel. But as we're going to see in a minute, you have two identities. Let's continue to verse 3. He say, Ach, let's read together. Ach, bi yoshev Yahafoch yado kol ayom. Actually, before we get there, you know what? I wanted to make. I wanted to make one more point on verse 2. It says on verse 2, Choshech velo. When we don't have a temple, we are in complete spiritual darkness. Okay, make yourself the note. When we're in a galut, we're in a complete spiritual darkness. And we're going to see it here continued. Verse 3, it says, against me alone he turned his hand again and again all day. Okay? This is again very interesting verse. Okay? It's talking about this term kol ayom. I want you to pay attention to this text. It says kol ayom, which represent a complete galut, okay? A complete exile. And what God is doing in the exile, what is he doing? Yafoch yado. What does it mean to turn your hand? When you say turn your hand, you spank somebody. That's literally what God is doing. Slapping and slapping and slapping and slapping. That's what a father does who wants to educate his son. Just understand that every calamity, yes, including the Holocaust, yes, including the Inquisition, yes, including the pogroms. Every calamity that comes through Israel is for one reason, to return Israel, okay? Israel is in an exile and being punished in an exile for that reason, so that they can turn back, okay? And here the man who is talking, okay, who say, Yoshev Yafoch Yado Kol Hayom. It's a continuous galut. Israel today is despised, and I want you to challenge you that Israel today is rejected. Why? Israel despised and rejected today because they're in spiritual galut. Anybody who think today that Israel is in the promised land spiritually because they are the land of Israel is wrong. It is the first part of the redemption, but it is not the final step of the redemption. Okay? Let's continue here. This man represents his clothing and his garment. He says, Bila besari ve'ori shiver atzmotai. What does the word bila mean? Bila comes from the word bull. Bull in Hebrew, okay, verse 4, he has worn away my skin and flesh, he has broken my bones. Let me explain this to you. It's used here the word bila. Okay, bila comes from the word bull, which is like a tree log, okay? Why is it? Because he's becoming numb. He's hardened. He's truly does not feel. When you're in a relationship and you stop feeling something, your heart turns to be cold and hardened. That's kind of what's happening. Bila, the word bila also, in interesting, comes from the word balui. A garment cannot be worn. If something is balui, something that is ripped to pieces. He's talking about a garment that cannot even be worn anymore. When he said, Bila besari, the flesh of Israel. Israel cannot be recognized anymore as Israel. Imagine taking a king and giving clothing for the king, a clothing of a poor man. Will you be able to recognize him? No. In essence, he's saying here that Israel stop looking like Israel, okay? It's actually the picture of all of Israel, the basar. Israel does not resemble Israel, which I always think about the words of Shaul in Romans. When he's talking who is a Jew, he's really a Jew inwardly. That is exactly what the Navi is actually saying here, okay? He's saying they don't even resemble. The Basar Chazal explained to us is the people, okay? And what is the skin? Because notice something amazing. He said it's mentioned here the Basar, and then it's mentioned the Or. What is the Or? Okay, the Or in it's translated here is the flesh. What's the difference between the skin and the flesh? Chazal the represent the Sanhedrin, okay? So not only that the people do not resemble what Israel is been in the past, also the Sanhedrin, our judges, do not represent what God called them to be. You know, people say today, well, we are a continuation about the rabbis. They say, we are a continuation of the Prushim. No, you are not. We are not a continuation of the Prushim in a classical sense of the word. Absolutely not. When the temple has been destroyed, ladies and gentlemen, when it's truly been destroyed, all of Israel does not resemble Israel in a spiritual sense of the word, okay? Israel ceased to be fully Israel. Okay, I know this is not an easy statement to receive, but that is exactly what it's saying, that without this temple, with the spiritual exile, with the galut, that's what Israel start to look through something else. So who is this man that is presented here? Okay, that his flesh is eaten and his skin is eaten. That is a picture of Israel, okay? And here it says, it's talking about Shiver Atzmutai. Okay, it's talking about his broken bones. And now he's saying in verse 5, read with me verse 5, he says, Bana alai vayakaf rosh util'a. In English, he is besieged and surrounded me with bitterness and hardship. Okay, who is he talking about here? About being, that is talking about King Nevu. On the short term, I'm going to make a statement that will be, I want you to think about this, because there's a different way to interpret this particular. It's talking about Israel. Israel is being exiled by King Nebuchadnezzar, who besieged the city. Okay, but it also, as you're going to see in a minute, both verse 4 and verse 5 and verse 6 and the rest of the chapter, as you're going to see, also apply to King Mashiach. Okay, Bana alai vayakaf rosh util'a. He's speaking about putting exile and blockade around the Jewish people. Okay, by the way, it says the same thing. The same verse is repeated in Kohelet. Okay, and in Kohelet it speaks about Hasatan himself. You want to know who is the ultimately one to want Israel in exile? Hasatan himself. And look at what it says here. Just to describe, we're still just describing the spiritual condition of what a galut is like. I want you to think about it. You are in a galut today. You might know Yeshua, but the Geulah did not come. Therefore, you and I are in a galut. And the description of a galut here is chilling in the next verse. Verse 6, it says, Kemechashchim hoshiveni kimetei olam. Okay? He has made me live in darkness like those who are long dead. The key word here is the word kimetei olam. So many people tell you, oh, what you need is Torah and you're good. Wrong. He says that they know about the Torah. They're in the Galut. They can practice Torah. But he says, no, no, no. When you are in the Galut, he uses the term kemetei olam. As you are not just spiritually, but it is as you are physically dead, which leads us to an important point. Israel without a temple. Israel without Bet Hamikdash, and you see all this argument around the Bet Hamikdash, around the Temple Mount recently. Why is it? Because Israel without a temple, okay, it says here, it is as you are dead meat. That's literally what the prophet is saying. He's saying we are dead meat without this, okay? And it's amazing, okay? I'm going to look at this really, really quick. I want you to pay attention because he says here, "B'mechshavim ushiveni kimetei olam." Okay, but you know what the Targum says on it? You know, Eicha, the book Eicha is also better in Aramaic. The Targum is adding an important note for us that start to tell us about the real identity of this person. What did he say? It says, and I quote from the Targum, Bebet Yesurin techoshcha uvteni kemitim. I am not just in darkness, but I am afflicted. I am afflicted for you in the place called the house of the affliction. I want to ask you a question today. Who is the one suffering in the house of the affliction? What is the house of the affliction? Okay, this individual, in my opinion, cannot be just Israel. Israel is afflicted, okay, but he is in the house of affliction. Who is in this house of affliction considered as dead? I know that you know the answer. It is the Messiah. And a matter of fact, that is exactly what it says in the book of Zechariah, chapter 13. It says in Zechariah 13, and they shall say to him, where are the wounds between your hands? That you should answer, these are the wounds that I was wounded in the house of my lovers. What are these wounds? The word wounds, there is the same word Yesurim. What are those afflictions? Somehow, at least prophetically speaking, I see a connection between Zechariah 13 to the Targum, who is talking about the fact that not only that he is suffering, okay, he's made me live in darkness, but this darkness have a name. This darkness have a name, and what is it called? Make yourself a note. It's called Beit Yesurim, the house of affliction. So there is a little bit more that we have to learn about this house of affliction. Who is the one that is going to the house of affliction? Here you go. The answer is given us by Chazal. Are you ready? You're going to learn a lot about the identity of this particular individual in Lamentation chapter 9. It says in Nedarim 64, the Gemara relates, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says, any person who does not have children is considered like a dead. Okay? This is a midrash speak about, it says, why did it say he is good as dead? Who is the one who is good as dead? Okay? Who is the good as dead? Chazal give 4 reasons. Reason number 1, Chazal give me children or else I'm dead. If you don't have children, you're dead, just as Rachel says. That's a nice opinion, but there are other opinions. It was taught also in a Brita to read the passage in the Talmud in context. So you don't say, well, this is the only opinion of the rabbis. No, they give other opinions. Okay, here you go. Here's another opinion. Listen to this. And it was taught in the Brita. 4 are considered to be there: a pauper, a poor man, a leper, and a blind person, and one who does not have children. Okay? On a leper it says that Aaron had said to Moses in regard to Miriam's leprosy, let her not, I pray, be as one dead. Beloved, one of the names of the Messiah in Judaism is a leper. And what is leper? Leper in Judaism, according to Chazal, is one is considered dead. Okay? So when we read here the text, backing back to Lamentation, to the book of Lamentation, chapter 3, verse 6, when he mentioned that the identity of this person, we're trying to uncover the real identity of this person. When we try to uncover his identity, we learn that he is, it says in the text, he is as dead. Who is the one who is dead? It is the leper. Who is dead? He is the Mashiach. This is absolutely incredible, okay? It is talking about this, and I want you to see this, okay? As a matter of fact, Chazal explain that he's talking not just about the Mashiach, but Chazal says he's talking also about Israel. I would like you to listen to the commentary from the Zohar itself. It says and explain this time. Verse 6 says, it says again, verse 6 here, it says that they are as it used the word kemetei olam. What does it mean to be met olam? When can a person is completely dead? Listen to the way the Zohar explained it. He says, ve'od, furthermore, shehadofek hu kumo teruah b'meirut. Your pulse is like a teruah of a shofar in speed. Dochak achar, pulse upon pulse. Miyat tavo ha'geula ve'od. Ota chole sheyalev, there is a sickness in Israel that is their heart. And she'aruach eina noshevet alea, when he does not receive spirit, shene'emar ve'ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei haaretz, as it says, the spirit of the Lord is hovering upon the water. היא לא דופקת בעורקים שלה. There is no pulse. Are you hearing? Without spirit, without the Ruach HaKodesh, without Holy Spirit, there is no pulse. וכולם, everybody, חשובים בגלות כמו מתים. If one does not have a pulse, he is in the exile and he is counted as dead. Just as it says in verse 6 here in the book of Echa. As it is said, and it's quoted, it is make them live in darkness like those who long dead. Are you following what I'm telling you, friends? The Zohar quoting Eicha to explain that this represents Israel, time of the Galut. Okay? ומishum ze bagalut ani yeshena. Yeshena. In the Galut, in the spiritual exile, it's a spiritual sleepiness. Vehi chola bagalut. When we are in the Galut, when Israel Neshama is one Neshama in the Galut, he's sick. Israel is sick today. Today is a day that we are crying upon Israel's sickness, okay? I hope everybody understands this. Look at me. Vehi chola bagalut. Vekama rofim. Here's the doctor arrived. Bravo. Here's the doctors. All the rabbis are the doctors and all the Talmidim, right? Listen to the word of Chazal. וכמה רופאים תלמידי חכמים משתדלים עליה. All the rabbis come. Yes, they are like a doctors. Yes, our rabbis are like a doctors. Yes, our sages are like a doctors. And they're doing their best. עם כמה בשמים, they put some perfume, וריחות של שושנים, ליליס, תפוחים ואגוזים ורימונים, apples, nuts, pomegranate. It's a picture of Torah. More Torah, more Torah, more Torah. But look what happened. I want you to pay attention. ולא חוזרת אליה הרוח בהם. But the spirit will not return to her. They can do whatever they want, those Torah teachers. They can pray. You can go to the graves of the tzaddikim. The spirit will not return to him, בגלות בחולי שלה, because his sickness is a sickness that cannot be healed or cured. והדופק לא חוזר אליה. The pulse does not return to her. But here is the answer. Are you ready? Guys, this is amazing. This is amazing. This is from the book of Ecclesiastes. I hope everybody share it now. Ad sheyavo, especially if you're questioning Messiah. Ad sheyavo, until the one who will come. And what is his name? Haroeh ane'eman ahuv shelah, the beloved, faithful shepherd of Israel. Shene'emar haroeh b'shem. As the shepherd has come through the lilies, through the roses, umavila tapuach. He restored her to the garden. V'sambechotma, he gave her and put the apple in her nose. And maricha bo v'nodat elav. She smelled the apple and she's healed. As it is written, the Menachem, the comforter, he's the one, Menachem Mashiv Nafshi, as it is written. The comforter restored the also. Miyad chozeret haruach v'adofek elea. Immediately the spirit returned and the pulse returned. Are you following what Chazal are telling us? Israel is in exile and we can study Torah and we can bring and call upon all the rabbis and we can make tzedakah and mitzvot. But that is not the It could be important, I'm not saying it is not, but that is not the ultimate solution. The ultimate solution is the one who called Haroeh Bashoshanim. Okay, this is incredible. Who is the shepherd? There is a solution, as you're going to see, to what's happened here. We're going together. I don't know if we're going together because my camera might run out of time. But I hope this is touching your spirit just as much as it touched my spirit. Verse 7, now that we understand how bad a galut is. A galut is like a person have an incurable cancer that cannot be healed by anything else except to the Mashiach himself. That's what Chazal are telling us up to this point, okay? Then that's why the Mashiach have to equate the temple. Now you understand Yeshua's word very, very well, I hope. Verse 7. Gadar ba'adi velo etze hechbid nachashti. He was walled me in, so I can't escape. He's weighed me down with chains. Okay, the word there nachashti, there's a clue, linguistic clue. Nachash, a serpent. It's represent a cord, and he literally, the word there in Hebrew, he is imprisoned me. Okay, that's literally what he said. He is gadar ba'adi. He is put me in gadar. He is putting me in a prison. Who is the one who is coming out of the prison, friends? Now we know the real identity of this person. If you read my book, The Return of the Kosher Pig, you know that the name of the Mashiach is the Poretz, who the one who break through the fence. He is being imprisoned. Who is imprisoned him? Israel imprisoned him. We have imprisoned Mashiach now for 2,000 years, okay? And here it uses the word by Yirmiyahu. Yichbid. It's come from the word Yichbid, as we feel the weight of the sin of all the people in the Galut. Do you understand that Yeshua feeling, and he will feel until he returns, the weight of all of Israel sins in the Galut until the Geula will come? That's exactly what he's talking. He's talking about him finally going and breaking out through this chain that holds. And we have to ask ourselves in Tisha B'Av, who has imprisoned Mashiach? If this is truly speaking about Mashiach, as we already see, who has imprisoned him? What made him a prisoner? I have a lot of teaching on this topic. I encourage you to check it out. We all imprisoned Mashiach today. I know it's easy and fun to think about doing Hava Nagila. But the picture here in these verses is not just about the story of Israel, but they're also the story of Mashiach. The story of Israel and the story of Mashiach are parallels. They are one in the same. Okay? And a matter of fact, it's continued. In verse 8, listen to verse 8. My goodness, I hope my camera will hold on. I'll be able to finish the study. It says, verse 8, גם כי אזעק ואשבע סתם תפילתי. Look what happened. Even when I cry out, pleading for help, he shout out my prayer. Well, that sounds pretty hopeless, right? Why should we pray today? Okay? Listen to that. Chazal said on this day, and I quote, Miyom shecharav bet amigdash. In the day that the temple has been destroyed, nin'alu sha'arei tefillah. In the heaven there is a gate, and according to Chazal, it's called the gate of tefillah. Okay? And these gates are shut down because the baseless hatred among Israel. If this is the truth, so does that mean that God doesn't hear prayer today? Yes and no. Yes and no. The answer given in the Talmud itself, Bavav Metzia 59a says, Rabbi Elazar says, since the day of the temple was destroyed, the gate of prayers are completely locked, and prayer is not accepted as it was once, as it is stated in the lament of the temple destruction. True, I plead, I call out, he shout out my prayer. That's Lamentation 3:8. Yet, despite the fact that the gates of prayer are locked, with the destruction of the temple, the gates of tears, there is another gate, there's a back gate. How good God is that he left a back gate to the children of Israel. Of prayer were locked. With the destruction of the temple, the gates of tears were not locked. And it is the one who cry before God may rest assured that his prayer will be answered. That is, it says, hear my prayer, Lord, and give ear to my pleading. Keep not my silence at my tears. That's Psalm 39, verse 13. So yes, we are in Galut today, and yes, our prayers are really not answered. But remember that when the brothers of Yosef stood before Yosef and they saw Yosef lamented, it is the tears, Shaddai. You have a teaching on the Sha'arai Dlatot Iftach. My tears are open, or Sha'arai Dma'ot Iftach also. My tears are open, the gate. The gate is still have opening today, a back gate through Teshuvah. That's why Teshuvah is so important today. It is critical for us today to exercise Teshuvah. But even with this back gate open, the main gate today is closed because we are in the Galut. We need a Mashiach. Israel need a Mashiach today, not just to build a temple. Please understand, the real issue is not just building a temple. The real issue is that without a temple, we have no communication with God. We're in a Galut. All of us in a Galut, including the believers of Yeshua, at least in a partial Galut. Okay? Look with me in verse 9. Here we go, we're back to the fence. גדר דרכי בגזית, נתיבותי איבה. Verse 9. He who barred my way with blocks of stone, he has make my paths crooked. Very important verse. Wait a second. It uses here the word netivotai. And it says that the netivot, which is the way, is crooked. The word here, Iva is something that is twisted. Wait a second though. Every Shabbat we pray, Etz chaimi lemachazikem ba v'kol tomchei ameusha. What's the next line from Proverbs chapter 3? Nitivotea shalom. Her ways are ways of pleasantness. Wait, if the Torah is the way of pleasantness, how come it says here that the way of the way is the way of crookedness? Okay? and actually Even Ezra say on the word netivotai or netivotea, he said that the way is known. Wait a second, if the way is known, if the way is truly known, okay, and if the way is truly known, how come it's crooked? If we know the way, why is it crooked? Why are we not going in the right path? Let me explain to you what the Navi is saying is. The Navi is saying here that because the Churban, because the destruction of the temple, there has been historic ramifications upon all Israel who chose the wrong. Because the destruction of the temple, okay, which caused because was caused because the death of a righteous, of a blameless hatred, we know who it is, but because of this decision, the temple has been destroyed, and because the temple has been destroyed, Israel now going in a way that is a derailed way. It is a way that here the text says, the exact word, Iva. It's a crooked way. It is not their way. Why do you think Yeshua says, Ani ha'emet haderech v'chaim? He said, no, I was the way. I am the way. I am the way. The words of Yeshua are so clear. The rejection of the Jewish Messiah 2,000 years ago not only led Israel to the Galut. Yes, you can call me anti-Semite, but that is true. The decision not to choose Israel, not to choose Messiah, not just led Israel to calamities, but chose Israel to go away from the Torah, the simple Torah. You see, that's what Yeshua spoke about when you read those words. Nitivotei Iva in English, okay? Paths are crooked. In Matthew 23, verse 4, Yeshua said, then Yeshua spoke to the crowds and he Talmidim saying, the Torah scholars and Pharisees, they sit on the seat of Moshe. So whatever they tell you, do and observe. But don't do what they do. For what they say, they do not do. They tie up heavy loads, hard to carry, and lay them on the man's shoulder, but they themselves aren't willing to lift a finger to move them. What is he talking about? He's not talking about Torah. Yeshua is not saying that the Torah is this heavy burden and this heavy weight. God forbid, chas v'chalila. He said that the derech, that the path that they are taking you, because of the rejection of I, it's becoming burdensome. You know, to practice, to be a good Jew today, to practice Torah today is complicated. It's, when I'm thinking about all the halachot today to practice and follow God as comparison, let's say, to Avraham Avinu, I say, what a difference in the complexity and the simplicity of the emunah of Avraham Avinu. When he's talking about here in verse 9, Nitivotei Iva, he says, that there is offense. He barred me from the way of Blockstone. He is also today, let me apply this verse simply another way. Mashiach today, he is barred. He himself is barred from returning to Israel. His path is crooked. You know why? I read this verse completely differently. Why? Because we make the path for Mashiach crooked too. It's not that we're only going in a crooked path. Yeshua wants to return today to Zion, and we also make his path crooked today. And the prophet Isaiah said, make a way, clean up the path. You want to know what this day is about? It's a day for us to remember, friends. It's a day for us to remember, to clean out the path, make a way. The way is crooked now for 2,000 years, friends, and we have to make the way back to Mashiach to return. Okay, just a second, I lost the picture. Okay, here we go, the picture is back. There is a need for us to make a way and return to the way. It's both of them. It's our relationship with Mashiach. Okay, when Yeshua is talking about the heavy weights, he's saying, you make it so difficult. You have made it so difficult to come to the way because you're rejecting me, so now you're going and making your own way. Okay. It's a tragedy of our people. Continue verse 10. Look with me in verse 10. It says, he lies in wait for me like a bear, like a lion in the hiding. Dov orev hu li, aryeh b'misterim. Who is the dove? That's a very interesting question. Let me tell you what Evan Ezra says about this verse. He says the reason it's mentioned dove and aryeh because the dove come to proclaim the lion. Okay? Could it be that the dove, I am just hypothesizes. Could it be that the dove represent the first coming of Mashiach and aryeh represent the Lion of Judah who represent his second coming when he's going to come by mystery in the cloud of heaven? That's the way at least I understand this verse, okay? It says something interestingly in the Kedushat Levi, in a commentary on Megillat Eicha. It says, what is the meaning of this verse? Aklal, here is the rule. She'Hashem itbarach echriv et bet tif'arto, that God may his name be blessed, destroyed the house of his glory. Ve'anachnu Israel, and we are Israel begalut. We are Israel in the galut. Akolu bevadai toval Israel. We are in exile for our own benefit. כי בוודאי ירחם אדוני עלינו יותר ויותר ויבנה בית מקדשו ביתר שעת ויתר עוז. It is for our benefit because God will have mercy upon us and he will build the temple in greatest passion in the future. ונמצא מה שנראה עכשיו, הגלות לא טוב, אבל באמת לקדוש ברוך הוא נגלה כל הנסתרים שהכל הוא טובה לישראל. Even the galut, even the exile that we are here today will ultimately serve for the benefit of Israel because Israel will return to be Israel because what we're suffering today. וזה מה שאמר, דוב עורב, הרמז על הגמול. The bear represent the galut, the aryeh represent the grace, the mercy, okay, that he will return and will resurrect the temple again from heaven. And that's what it says in the book of Revelation, that Jerusalem will come in a greater glory, in a greater splendor. So could it be that we are right now between the dove, the bear, and between the aryeh season? Yes, that's called Bein HaMetzarim. We are between those seasons. Continuing in verse 11. And I will say this, if I cut in this study, it's cut, I will conclude this study later on today, just so that you can have it. Verse 11, he has forced me aside and torn me to pieces, leaving me stunned. Kalu bedmaot enai, chamar maru me'ai, nishpach la'aretz kevedi, al shever bat Ammi, batef olel veyonek berech. Excuse me, I'm in the wrong verse. Excuse me, I'm in the wrong verse. Here we go. I was in chapter 2. Here we go. Darkai sorer veyachpisheni. Samni shomem. My ways, he say, are the way of the sorer. What is a sorer? A sorer is somebody who is wicked. It comes from, according to Rashi, from the word sirim, which is talking about a thorny. Have you ever walked that is so dry, that is so thorny, that just a step, you feel the thorns going through your feet? That is exactly what he's representing. He say, there will be a time that Israel will be like a thorny ground. Have you wondered why it's so hard to get to witness and share about the Mashiach with Jewish people? Israel, for the most part today, is a thorny, hard ground. Sharing the emunah with Jewish people is a thorny, hard ground because the destruction of the temple, something, it's a spiritual. The blindness is not a physical, it's a spiritual issue. And that's exactly what it says. It says that you will become, Israel will become. Remember, it's applied both to Israel. It's applied to Israel as well, this chapter. דרכי סורר יחפישני, שם לי שומר. We will be desolate, like in the middle of a wilderness, completely. Today is a place that is not easy to work in. But as you see, Israel is being resurrected physically and spiritually in this that the time of the season of the turtle dove coming. It's a season for the rain. Now it's the time of the spring. Hashem is going to bring a revival. And what is happening here? Verse 12. דרך קשתו ויציבני כמטרה לחץ. How is God going to bring this softness? He is going to take this one man and he's going to make him a matara. The matara means a target. And he's going to make him the target of all of our sins. Okay? Metzudat Zion saying here, listen to that. הוא הדבר אשר המורים מכוונים להשליך בו. He, not some object. He become the target where all the arrows will be aimed at. Who is it? He is the one who's going to bring deliverance to Israel. It cannot speak about Jeremiah here, okay? And it cannot speak about Israel, okay? Israel, through their affliction, I guess one could argue that Israel, through their affliction, can become the matara. And through their affliction, they will receive the Geulah. But I don't see it like this. When it's talking derech kachov etziveni kematara, it says, in Chazal, Ramban, actually Nachmanides, quote this in a connection to Esh and Gefrit. Remember Sodom and Gomorrah. It will be a time like Sodom and Gomorrah where he brought fire from heaven, okay? Gefrit, it's like sulfur he brought from heaven, okay? And what is he did? He bring it down. What is the word to bring down? It's the Hebrew word, according to Onkelos, is the word yerida. Yerida, or yerida, is something that comes down from heaven. It is talking about the chetzim that going to come upon him down. Friends, it's a clue talking about Mashiach. Mashiach had to go to Sheol. He had to go to Gehenom. He had to take the sins and the darts of all of Israel before the Geula will come. That's why it says in Deuteronomy 32:23 on Moshe, I will sweep with fortune on them, use up my arrows on them. On who? On Israel. Israel and Mashiach as one is the same. You want to know why Israel is rejected and hated so much? That is the reason. Israel is suffering for the Galut even today. Chazal explained on the context of this verse. Deuteronomy 32:23 is the verse I just read to you. The message is the Torah white. My arrows I have used up against them, yet they have not perished. The matter can be compared to a warrior who racks a beam, shooting all his arrows at the beam. In the end, the warrior finds out that he exhausted his supply of arrows, but the beam is still standing. Although Israel has collapsed frequently under the affliction of God, has disciplined it with, it always emerged with this affliction and rehabilitated. There is also a meaning in Jeremiah 3:12. He has bent his arrow and made its target of all these arrows. In essence, God is using those arrows against Israel, and I would say against Mashiach, so that Israel will be safe. You see, God doesn't hate the Jewish people. God doesn't make them suffer just so they will be in pain. God forbid He is doing that so that Israel resurrected. The only way Israel can be resurrected is if Israel is afflicted. Israel has to go through affliction in order to receive resurrection. Mashiach had to go through affliction before he go through resurrection. Here in verse 14, we learn about the true identity of this person. It says, Ahiti tzchok lechol amai veniginatam kol ayom. Which translated here, I am laughing stock. Listen to the perversion of the Jewish commentators on this verse. Who, it says literally here, I want to look carefully in this verse. It says, I become a laughing stock to all of my. Okay? The key word here is the word Ammi. Ammi. Lekol Ammi. Ammi is my people, not Amai. I said it wrong. Ammi. Okay? Chazal come and says, it is יצליחו בי יושבי שער אלה עובדי כוכבים. It's not a laughing stock to my people. It's a laughing stock to the goyim, by the goyim. You see, by the goyim. That's what Chazal says. But this cannot be the case, friend. The person who is going to bring the Geula, the person who is suffering here, is none other than the Mashiach, because he is suffering on the behalf of his people. The arrows are pointing at him. He is the laughing one. They say, Ammi, lekol Ammi, my people. Okay? He is laughed. You know how many times people laugh in Israel? They laugh at the name of Yeshua. Can I tell you how many times people mock this name to the point we change his name from Yeshua to Imach Shmo V'Zichro? We laugh at him. But isn't it interesting that this same person is going to bring the salvation? As you're going to see, it's all in these first 30 verses. He is the one who's going to bring salvation to all of Israel. Verse 15. Asheni. Which translates in English. Verse 14 was, I'm the laughing stock to all my people, the butt of their tongues all day. And verse 15, he has filled me with bitterness, sated me with wormwood. Beloved, what did they give Yeshua upon the cross? What have they given it? They give him a vinegar. Here is a picture of this. And notice the word Hebrew, asbieni. Asbieni, it's come from sova. Sova is something you give somebody through his mouth, okay? They give it to him through his mouth, sprinkle the things that goes through somebody's mouth. And in verse 16, actually, it will go there, it says, Va'igarem bechatzat shinai achpisheni be'afar. Okay? He has broken my teeth through gravel and pressed me down into ashes. What is the word achpisheni? If you do achpasha, are you ready? This is amazing. Achpasha is false witness. Achpasha is somebody false account that is not true. That's what it said. Ashbieni mean that they're going to give. Asbieni mean that they're going to give it to him. Achpisheni mean he's going to be suffering for false stories, false fables. All the fables that are found against Yeshua are fables. They are not true. They are lies, okay? And as a matter of fact, the word here, chatzat, it's talking about stone. What's a chatzat? It's a small stone, Rashi explained, okay? It's like a small stone. You want to know why we don't eat, in the first 9 days during 9 of Av, before 9 of Av, we don't eat meat? That's why. It's coming from this verse. Okay, he's suffering. Mashiach, this is a picture not of just Israel suffering, it is a picture of Mashiach suffering. He is the one who was the Roeh Bashoshanim, was going to bring the salvation and the Geula for Israel. Okay, verse 17, look at this. Vatiznach mishalom nafshi nashiti tova. The key of this verse, 17, very difficult verse, I have been so deprived of peace, I have so forgotten what happiness is. This man is describing his suffering, okay? And what does it mean, Nashita Tova? It's mean, Nashiti Tova, in Torah Mima, it's explained that this is, Nashiti Tova is talking about mikveh, immersion. In essence, he said, I cannot be immersed. I cannot go to a mikveh. All the tom'ai. Okay, so I'm so glad, Talmidim, that you're joining us again. We are still in the book of Echa, and I want to continue this live teaching to you so we can conclude chapter 3. If you miss the first hour plus, you miss the fact that the book of Echa has 5 chapters. 4 out of the 5 chapters are dealing specifically with, they specifically deal with the lamentation of Yerushalayim. But in chapter 5, there is something that is quite different that you don't see in, chapter 3, you see something different that you don't see in all the other chapters. It's, first of all, it has 66 verses, Aleph Bet of 22, 22 times 3, 66. But there is an identity, a mysterious identity of this servant, I will call him a servant, that is Israel. But as we also learn, it's also the Mashiach. And in the beginning of Lamentation, he described the great calamity of what does it mean to be in a galut. And we are in the galut today. We learn that we are in the galut because all of us, because there is no Bet Mikdash. We already learned this. And the last verses we have been in, just as a reminder, chapter 3, we've been looking at verse 15 and 16, where he's talking about the servant, not just, we already developed a case that the servant is not just Israel, but in some ways it's representing the Mashiach, also the Mashiach of Israel. And in verse 15 here, Asbieni b'merurim irveni le'ana. It's talking about bitterness. It says, he has filled me with bitterness, instead with a wormwood, something that will be given to him. This is a picture of Mashiach upon the cross. Vaygarem bechatzat shinai achpisheni ba'efer. Verse 16. We looked at the word achpisheni. And the word achpisheni means to have false testimony, to give a false testimony upon him. So this is really what he's talking about. The fact that he's going to be suffering, the servant going to be suffering, but also he's going to be suffering in a false testimony. It's true about Israel, and it is true certainly about Mashiach. Last week we looked about this verse 17, on this term Nashiti Tova, which again translated to, as you remember, Nashiti Tova, it says, I have so deprived of peace, I've forgotten what happiness is. This word happiness is Nashiti Tova. He's talking about the state of Israel. State constant filth. Galut means that we are all in constant filth, spiritual filthiness. And you might be rejoicing today that you have Mashiach, but since the temple is not being established, and I especially want to talk to the Talmidim of Shuvu, we cannot rest. Think about the Torah portion this Deuteronomy 1. Why am Moshe so upset? Upset because they were so complacent about their place. Guys, you cannot take your studying Torah, your mitzvot, your relationship with each other, you cannot take it in a casual way. And that's one of the big lessons. Again, Ani Gever, I am the man. I'm asking the question. We all need to ask what kind of a man and a woman of God we're going to be. What kind of a yeshiva we're going to have. What kind of community we're going to be. This is really important questions. Israel make a decision, and as we already learned in the past lesson, this historic mistake caused a series of mistakes that affecting Israel today. The Netivot, which is called the Torah, called Netivotei Shalom, it's called now Iva. It's a crooked. We all are crooked. Each one of us. That's why we need Mashiach so much, so quickly to return. So I want to continue because there's a big shift that is about to occur. First 18, 19 verses, depressing, hopeless. very, very, very sad to explain to all of you what is a galut. And now you understand that you and I are also in a galut today. And not only that we're in the galut, the reason I'm telling you that it is the Mashiach who also in the galut, because it says so. Just kind of put your hand and go to Yeshayahu. Quickly, Yeshayahu 63, it says, verse 9, Bekol tzaratam, in all the tribulation, lo tsar. What does that mean, Bekol tzaratam, lo tsar? It means that when they are in the galut, he is in the galut. When Israel suffers, Mashiach suffers. When Israel persecuted, Israel been persecuted. He is one inside. That's why this chapter is not just talking about Israel, it's talking about the Mashiach. You want to know where Mashiach today? Yeah, he's to the right hand of the Father, but he is atoned. And he cried. And we already saw the power of the tears from Mecha, from Lamentation. He atoned for us today. He's crying for Israel today. We need to cry a little bit harder so the gate will open up. We need to repent. We need to change our way just a little bit more so that the Geulah will finally come to Israel, because today we're in exile. Look at me in verse 18. We continue. Verse 18. That I think my strength is gone, and so is my hope in Adonai. This servant is completely lose help. His hope. V'omar avad nitzchi tochalti me'Adonai. Okay, it's interesting that it's used the word nitzchi. It's come from the word netzach. Okay, I have lost my eternal emunah in God. You know, a lot of Jewish people during the Holocaust lost their emunah in God. They said, where was God? Where was God during the Holocaust? That's a question a lot of people are asking all the time, okay? And that's basically what has been happening, okay? And it's interesting because Chazal connected, Even Ezra connected it to Isaiah 63:3. And he said, just especially when all the hope is lost, then I will put on my garment. And it's quote Isaiah 63:3, okay? That will be when he trample upon the enemies. And that's why he will be look like red, Edom. He will destroy Edom, okay? There is no hope in this chapter. It's very difficult. Tisha B'Av is a difficult day. But the hope is found today within each one of us. I want to tell you. And the hope is found in His Holy Torah. Look at the very, very next couple of verses. Remember my utter misery, the wormwood and the gall. Why does it mention the wormwood and the gall? Because we read about this. This is a picture of him suffering. You want to know what is going to give hope? Remember what you've been through, and remember the underwood and the gall. They have always on my mind. This is why I'm so depressed. Okay? And here in verse 21, something happened. Something supernatural happened. But in my mind, I will keep returning to something. I love this term. Returning to something. Ashiv et libi. Okay? It just says in my mind, it's a bad translation. Ashiv el libi, I return to my heart, something that gives me hope. What is this something that gives us hope? If we are today in Galut, if today the gates of prayer is closed, what gives us hope? How do we receive hope today? Okay? Al kenuchil, I will expect this. Okay? And he says, Teshuva, teshuva to my heart, not to my mind. We return this thing to our heart. And what is it? Okay? Verse 21. Write yourself a note. Verse 1 through 20 deals with the Galut. 21 all the way to 30 plus deal with the exit exit of the galut, the coming out of the galut, the redemption. And here in verse 21 he says, Zot ashiv eli bi al kach ochil. Now the next verse, okay? Look what it says. Al kach tochil. What does it mean, ochil? What is it talking about? Okay? Listen to this. Chazal connected this verse, this transformation, to the book of Psalm, chapter 119. In Psalm 119, verses 92, it says this, unless the law has been my delight, I should then have perished in my affliction. In essence, the remedy that is found to stop the distraction is in the Torah. Can the Torah save? Yes, to a degree the Torah can save. Because if we don't have the Torah, we're lost. What's happened here? The reason for the distraction is people forsaking the Torah. Our people must return to Torah to find the way. You see, the reason the way today is kind of like this, because we are forsaking the Torah of Mashiach. That's why it's saying that in the future, the Torah of Mashiach will be like we're learning a brand new Torah. We must learn the Torah today in such a way so that we find Mashiach, okay? That we find the Torah that will cause us to find the real way again, which is Mashiach, okay? So here it says in verse 22, look at this. Chasdei Adonai ki lo temnu, ki lo kalu rachamav. Okay, listen to this. Incredible. That the grace, here you go, is the God of the Torah, is God of grace? Absolutely. People think that the law is against grace, but here he's saying the opposite, that the grace of Adonai is not exhausted, that the compassion has not ended. So yes, he closed the main gate, but he's opened a back door for Israel. Thanks God he left this. And what is this thing he opened for Israel? It's something that is called in Hebrew chesed. Despite the rejection, people say, those who believe in rejection, in replacement theology all the time. What do they say? Well, Israel divorced God, Israel rejected God, so God placed Israel with another bride. The church is the bride. But listen to what he's saying here. It says, no, Israel is still the bride, and despite the rejection, his mercy is eternal. That's why we say every Shabbat, El Gomel Chasadim. What is a Gmilut Chasadim? Giving something that is not deserved. Giving something that is not earned. Okay? He is giving it to Israel, although Israel does not deserve it. Israel is going to be receiving it. As a matter of fact, look at the text here. The text here says, Chasnei ki lo temnu. Chasdei Adonai ki lo timnu. What is the meaning of the word timnu? Timnu is come from the Hebrew word tab. They've not ended. Rashi explained that the word timnu connected to the word tamu. Tamu mean ended, okay? In essence, the grace that God have his people, even in the galut, is endless, okay? This is interesting. I love the way Torah Tmima says. It says, Chasdei Adonai, Amar Rav Shimon ben Levi. HaKadosh Baruch Hu mityaesh min hatzadikim. Hashem give up on the tzaddiks. Hu chozer u'merachem aleim. Even on the tzaddik, he give up, and then he said, okay, I give him another chance. Udechtev chasdei Adonai ki lo temnu kal kulo rachamav. His mercy upon his people, Israel, are eternal. I love it. The Midrash Tehillim explain it here. And there is something that we have to understand today. God promised over Israel are everlasting promises. There's hope even in the galut. Even in darkness, there is hope. It says this in Midrash Tehillim. Let's read together. Davar echad, one matter. Hodu le'Adonai. Miyad. Hodu le'Adonai. Give thanks to the Lord. He is good. His mercy endures forever. Ma ki le'olam chasdo. What is the meaning? כי לעולם חסדו. You should know it from liturgy class. אין הקדוש ברוך הוא עושה חסד עם ישראל, לא לשנה, לא לשנתיים, אלא לעולם. The word olam means for eternity. Hashem continue to do mercy. It's explained in Midrash Tehillim, not for a year, not for 2 years, but for eternity. And that's what you fear in מגילת איכה. וכן את מוצא שנתן להם משה את התורה שנקראת חסד, שנאמר, ותורת חסד הלשונה. Look at this with me. Go quickly. Let's go to Proverbs. Look at this. Proverbs 31. 31. Look at verse 26. What is it? It says on the Torah, ותורת חסד על לשונה. ותורת חסד על לשונה. The Torah is the definition of grace. That's what Shlomo HaMelech said. What is the definition of Torah? Chesed, grace, mercy. That's the definition of what the Torah is. Therefore, it says here in Midrash Tehillim, ולא נלקחה מהם לעולם, אלא שניתנה להם למורשה. It is never can be taken away from Israel and given to anybody else. It's given them to inherit it. תורה ציווה לנו משה, מורשת קהילת יעקב, כל החסדים אשר איתם לעולם. Please understand. It is true that Israel in the Golah. It is true that Israel is in exile. All of this includes debt. But even it is debt, in this debt, there is always a chance for resurrection. And here Midrash Tehillim gave us a mashal, a proverb to explain it to us what it means. It says this, mashal leba'al habayit, Proverbs of the owner of the house. Shaya melave lekol bnei iro. Okay? He was coming with the people of his city. Vayu bnei iro omrim. And the people in his city אמרו, זכור אותו בעל הבית. Remember the owner of the house. Does that sound familiar to anybody from Midrash Yeshua is giving us? זכור אותו בעל הבית לטובה. Remember the owner of the house. שהוא נותן לנו כל צרכנו בימות הגשמים. He has given us all of our needs during the days of the rain. אלא שהוא נותן ממנו 3 סלעים רבים בימות החמה. He's take 3 rocks from us. בא אחד ואומר, אני נותן לך סלע אחד, הניחול הראשון, ומודים לשני. בא אחד ואמר, אני נותן לך חינם. וזה נאה להודות שהוא נותן חינם. He's coming and people are giving him this rocks. And he says, no, I am giving it to you for free because the thanksgiving is free. ככה הקדוש ברוך הוא. Therefore Hashem מפרנס. He is provider to his people, like it says in the Amidah, ולך נאה להודות, לכן הודו לאדוני כי טוב. Everything that is given us from God, everything, starting from the Torah, is given completely for free. Please understand the message here in chapter 3, when there is a change, is the message of grace, the message of mercy. And here in verse 23, we're going to see how he's going to bring this grace and how he's going to bring this mercy. Look with me in verse 23. It says, חדשים לבוקרים רבה אמונתך. On the cross, they are new every morning. How great is your faithfulness? How is he bringing this newness? He's bringing it through a chadasha, a brit chadasha, a new covenant. You know what the Jews believe in, a new covenant? Every morning when you get up in the morning and you say, Modeh ani lefanecha, melech chai vekayam, you're entering to a new covenant. Jewish people believe in a new covenant? Absolutely. Here, Yirmiyahu speak on behalf of all of Israel. He says, yes, we are in darkness, but tomorrow we're going to wake up and it's going to be a new day because we worship God of grace. Okay? Look at this word Rashi says on the word Chadashim Labkarim, a new morning. He says, the newness is your grace. Every day you have a new grace. Okay? Just because he gave you grace yesterday doesn't mean he's not going to give you grace today and tomorrow. He's going to give you grace tomorrow. That's part of the Brit HaChadasha. Rabba emunotecha, your emuna is great. It means, according to Rashi, that your promises are great. And we are to believe that you will keep all the things that you will do. Okay? Do you believe today? Do we believe that his grace is new? You see, the Brit HaChadasha is not a great newness in his teaching, newness in revelation, but his newness in his grace. Okay? So who is this Gever? Remember, he started with the word Gever. I am the man. And who is the Gever? Who is the man who will build the temple? Who is the man that will hasten the Geulah? Well, it is Mashiach. But according to the next verse, it is also you and I. Look at what it says in the very, very next verse. It says, Adonai is all I have. I say, therefore I will put my hope in him. And read with me verse 27. I'm just jumping ahead. Tov la gever ki yisahol b'nei horav. It is for a man who bear a yoke from his youth. Here you go. Who is this man? It's used the same verse, the same word as verse 1. It is Mashiach, it is Israel, and it is each one of us who willing to take the yoke from his youth. The word yoke, all, is an important word in Hebrew. I want to talk about this today. This day, Tisha B'Av, is about nothing else. It's about you today. First and foremost, you, and then us, and then Mashiach. Taking upon all of us the yoke of the kingdom of heaven. When a Jewish boy reached the age of 13, they asked him the question, are you willing to take upon yourself the yoke of the kingdom of heaven? What does it mean to take upon yourself the yoke of the kingdom of heaven? I thought the yoke should be light and easy. The word all, yoke, is not to be confused with the word burden. Yoke is like a cause. It's like a center of your existence. And here, the Navi says, Tov la gever ki isa ol. Is it the man who is willing to take upon himself the restoration, okay, of the kingdom of heaven here on earth, who will be the one who will be part of the tikkun, part of the correction, part of the Geulah, okay? This is important because it says, He natal alav. Listen to what Evan Enzer says. He says here on verse 28, on verse 27 and 28, he says, you see, because in 28 he's actually described, let's go to 28, it's described what he's going to do. He says, Yashav badad vayadom, ki natal alav. Listen to this incredible verse. Let him sit alone in silence, where he has laid on him. But what is the Hebrew says here? Ki natal alav. What is natal? Natal is take upon himself, Ebenezer says, the burden. Natal is the task, the commission. If you're a student of the yeshiva, if you're not a student of the yeshiva and you're full of Mashiach, you have matala, you have a task upon yourself, you have a burden. And the burden, if you take it upon yourself, it means that you're going to become lonely. Okay? Why? Because you're going to be rejected and despised. Just as Mashiach, as we see here. Remember we read earlier, he's the laughing stock. You will become the laughing stock. You rejected and despised. You will become like Mashiach ben Yosef in order to bring Mashiach ben David. You see the point here? The word here, Vayadom, it's come from the word Aaron when he saw his two sons die. Achrei mot. It says, Vayadom Aaron. He was bleeding inside. He watched and suffered in agony. Okay, Kinatal alav. Look what Rashi says. He is took upon himself all the gezerot of Israel, all the judgment upon Israel this individual will put upon you. My question to each one of us who are watching today, what are you willing to truly take upon yourself? What are we, as Messianic believers, willing to take upon ourselves? How much burden are we willing to take upon ourselves truly to see a rectification for the Churban Bet HaMikdash? This is the question today. Echa. Not just echa, how, but are we willing to take upon ourselves the burden? Here in this text, in verse 28, he will be alone, he will be rejected, and he will take upon himself the burden of rectification. Okay? It's talking about both Mashiach and Israel. In order to see the Geulah, Mashiach and Israel have to work together. And look what's happened in verse 29. ייתן בעפר פיו. אולי יש תקווה? Maybe, just maybe there is hope. You see, we went from the galut, from the golah, now we add the aleph to Geulah. Same word. Exile, redemption. From golah, we're going to Geulah. Let him submit absolutely that maybe, just maybe, there is hope. Israel have to suffer today. When Israel suffer, by the way, Mashiach suffer. The question I ask you today, Talmidim and friends, do you suffer as Mashiach? Do you suffer with the Jewish people? That's what hastening the Geulah. And as we saw in Isaiah 63:9, that's what bringing back Mashiach to the world. Not sinat chinam, but ahavat chinam. To take upon himself somebody else burden going to bring the building of the temple. Okay? That's is why Yeshua says there is no greater love when one give his life for his brothers. Rectification of sinat chinam is called ahavat chinam. And here in verse 30, we see the ultimate this. Do you think that turning the other cheek is something that Yeshua made up? No. This verse speaks about the Messiah. He knew very well what he was quoting when it says, let him offer his cheek to the one who strike it and receive his fill of insults. Only ahavat chinam, friends. Only ahavat chinam. One who is willing to turn his cheek to his brother can be a builder of the Mishkan to get Israel out of Galut. I want to challenge you in conclusion. Do somebody today strike your cheek? Is somebody today hurt you? Is somebody today spoke against you? If you're willing in this holy day, in Tisha B'Av, to make a rectification for this, forgive them, release them, you are partaking in part of the most important rectification of all of Israel. If you hold something against somebody today and you don't let go, you are delaying the coming of the Messiah. A teshuva can return Messiah, and that's what start in verse 31. Verse 1 through 21 represent the exile. 21 through 30 represent the transformation through taking upon ourselves the image of Mashiach. And verse 31, talking about the process of teshuvah and restoration of our people. Friends, we don't just have to say Echa today. But today I pray that all of you say, Ani HaGever, Ani HaIsha, I am the man, I am the woman that God has called to bring a tikkun, to bring rectification. Because somehow when you rectify things here in a microcosmic way, things are being rectified in heaven. And we're hastening in the Geulah of Mashiach. I pray that this study touch your life. Ask the question today, Echa, upon all of Israel. Ask the question, what part am I playing in it? And let us make the rectification quickly, so Messiah can return through Ahavat Chinam. The only thing that will return Mashiach. God bless you, Talmidim, and I pray the fast will be easy for you. And there's a lot to think about in this last few hours of the Tzom. Litraot. Is upon me